his own Trump administration colleagues should be given a blind eye, just overlooked, or whether, like the warnings of pardoning violent January 6 offenders, they're warnings to be heeded. There is an unfathomable difference between a seeming facade being constructed around this nominee here today and what he has actually done and said in real life when left to his own devices.
Senator Whitehouse didn't just question this nominee, he sounded an alarm. In a few minutes of testimony, he exposed what happens when partisan loyalty creeps into the very institutions meant to protect democracy. Here's why his warning matters.
I remember January 6th. Colleagues running through our halls to flee the mob, colleagues shouting that rioters should be shot, us returning to our constitutional business through hallways cleared for us by automatic weapons carrying SWAT teams. None of you, none of us, said those violent rioters should be pardoned. A Republican colleague said such pardons would be hard to believe, even absurd. Your former colleague J.D. Vance said the violent rioters should not be pardoned. Even Jim Jordan said pardons would, and I quote, focus on all the people who didn't commit any violence. Well, Trump pardoned all of them. And there's a lesson in that. Every time you think Trump would never go that far, rethink that. We all seem to agree that violence against police is unacceptable, yet more than 600 people who physically attacked Capitol Police officers were just put back on the street, part of a 1,500-person personal Trump army, now out there with people who have proven themselves willing to do violence on Trump's call. In only 10 days, some are already back committing crimes. We've also tried as a committee, together, to address the dangers of illicit drug sales over the internet, and I assume we're all against murder for hire. But Trump also just pardoned a dark web operator sentenced to life in prison for trafficking illegal drugs online and accused of soliciting murders for hire. Those pardons, as Mr. Patel has said, are a mistake, but they are also a signal that we are entering a strange and dangerous time. That is the context for today's hearing. Warnings that the FBI could become Trump's enforcer, use the powers of law enforcement to stifle speech and dissent, punish political rivals of either party, and hand out free passes, get out of jail free cards to violent supporters are warnings we should heed. Here are some warnings of this nominee's Trump administration colleagues. Former Attorney General Bill Barr said, this nominee has virtually no experience that would qualify him to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency, end quote, and we would never be able to command the respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau. That's for the deputy position. Former CIA Director Gina Haspel was reported threatening to resign rather than have this nominee serve under her. John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, said, I didn't think he was qualified. I was forced to hire him. Trump's deputy national security advisor, the nominee's former supervisor, said, his ideas are ludicrous. He's absolutely unqualified for this job. He's untrustworthy. And it's an absolute disgrace to even consider an individual of this nature. That's from Republican appointees who worked with him. And here's what this nominee himself has said about using his office to prosecute journalists. We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. We're gonna come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly. Is that a correct quotation, Mr. Patel?
Senator, that's a partial quotation,
but it's correct.
in part.
Regarding his publication of his enemies list, Mr. Patel proclaimed, "The manhunt starts tomorrow," and reposted a video depicting him taking a chainsaw to his political enemies. Is that you, Kash Patel, reposting that at the top of that page?
Senator, I had nothing to do with the creation of that meme.
Is that you reposting it, was my question.
And that's me at the top.
You said FBI agents were responsible for the violence on January 6th, and I quote you here, "beyond a reasonable doubt." Is that what you said?
That's completely incorrect, and I appreciate the opportunity to address that.
I'll give you an opportunity in writing, but this is my time now.
Have at it.
An Inspector Attorney General investigation found that that was false. And you said we should impeach judges who rule against Donald Trump, who are, in your words, political terrorists. When this nominee tries to explain all this away, keep one thing in mind. He's testified under oath before a Colorado judge who presided over a Trump case in which he was a witness. And the judge found, and I'm quoting here, he was not a credible witness. His testimony is not only illogical, but completely devoid of any evidence in the record. That's from a judge. This is a dangerous time, and I ask all my colleagues to consider whether these plain comments by this person and by his own Trump administration colleagues should be given a blind eye, just overlooked, or whether, like the warnings of pardoning violent January 6 offenders, they're warnings to be heeded. There is an unfathomable difference between a seeming facade being constructed around this nominee here today and what he has actually done and said in real life when left to his own devices. Conduct shows character. And if you look at history, you see the danger of security chiefs in authoritarian regimes becoming the tools of political power. The characteristics that they often show are that they are vengeful, that they are grandiose, that they are intemperate, that they are partisan and blindly loyal, and that they are servile and won't say no. I'm afraid that the history of this nominee's conduct raises those warnings.
What Senator Whitehouse delivered here wasn't just another heated exchange in a crowded hearing room. It was a clear warning about the fragility of democratic institutions when loyalty to one man begins to overshadow loyalty to the law. Listen closely, because the pattern he outlines isn't theoretical, and it's not abstract. It's happening right in front of us. He lays out a chain of events that should trouble anyone who cares about impartial justice. A former president granting mass pardons to people who assaulted police. A nominee for one of the nation's most powerful law enforcement roles who has a documented history of public threats, conspiratorial rhetoric, and courtroom testimony so unreliable that a judge rejected it outright. And senior Republican national security figures, people who work directly with him, warning that he is simply unfit for the job. None of these facts stand alone. Taken together, they show a system inching toward something dangerous. A political movement that wants an FBI director not because they can serve the country, but because they can serve the leader. And that is exactly why Whitehouse's line of questioning matters. He isn't speculating about motives. He's looking at the evidence. The social media posts promoting manhunts, the talk of punishing journalists, the eagerness to excuse violence when it's politically convenient. These aren't the instincts of a professional investigator, they're the instincts of a partisan enforcer. And the judge's warning that this nominee was not a credible witness might be the most important detail of all. Because if someone cannot be trusted under oath, how can the public trust them with the power to surveil, investigate, and prosecute? This is where the larger democratic danger comes into focus. The FBI wields extraordinary powers, arresting suspects, gathering intelligence, seizing evidence. In a democracy, those powers depend on public confidence that they will be used fairly. When a nominee signals they might use those powers to settle political scores, a line is crossed. We've seen what happens in weaker democracies when security agencies become personal weapons for those in power. Dissent is chilled, criticism becomes risky, and oversight collapses into silence. Whitehouse reminds us of exactly that pattern. The authoritarian playbook isn't loud, it's slow erosion. First, blur the lines between political loyalty and professional competence. Then, normalize selective investigations. After that, undermine journalists and whistleblowers until fewer people are willing to expose the truth. Eventually, the institutions that once protected the public become instruments of pressure. And the moment career agents see partisanship creeping into command decisions, trust within the agency starts breaking down. When internal trust collapses, public trust collapses with it. So what do you do in the face of that? You raise the standard for who gets to occupy these positions. You insist on nominees with proven impartiality, respect for the courts, and credibility under oath. You reinforce the guardrails, inspectors general with teeth, whistleblower protections that actually work, and clear boundaries preventing political interference. And above all, you keep the space open for watchdogs, reporters, advocates, and citizens who refuse to look away from uncomfortable truths. Because democracy doesn't erode in one dramatic moment. It erodes when people stop paying attention. Whitehouse's message is simple but urgent. If someone has shown they cannot separate political loyalty from legal responsibility, the Senate's duty isn't complicated. It's to say no. And the public's duty is just as clear. Stay engaged, demand transparency, and defend institutions that exist to protect the country, not a political movement. The future of accountability rests in how seriously we respond to warnings like these.